So we're back, and let's take a look at our tasks for today. To begin with, make sure that when you're looking at and performing these labs that you can download later after each deep dive, that you are following the notes in the beginning. Most of these deep dive lab scenarios require existing configuration before they can begin to be configured. Also, most lab scenarios use different pre-configuration from other deep dive labs. Therefore, it's necessary to load the startup configs prior to the beginning of any of these lab scenarios. If you're renting from I&E a voice rental rack, then you can use the startup configs for this deep dive by logging into your members account, navigating to the rack rental tab, and clicking on Control Panel. Click here to choose a configuration to be loaded on your voice rack, and then choosing the appropriately named selection for this module. Now do note this will only load your router and switch configs, so PSTN, routers 1, 2, and 3 for corporate headquarters, branch 1 and branch 2 respectively, and then switch 1 at headquarters and switch 2 at branch 2. Branch 1 has a Ethernet switch module. However, it does not load your CUCM configs at this time. So for CUCM configs, you're going to log on to the Cisco Unified Communication Manager administration page, change the host name for the pub to 177.110.10 if it's not already done, and then activate all of your services on both the pub and sub. And then finally, you're going to import the CUCM startup.tar file that we provide for you as a part of every deep dive module. We also provide all of the final configurations for CUCM and all of the routers as well, of course. And we give you a demo video on how to do that if you happen to have never done that import before. And we mentioned that a couple things happen on import that we almost always just have to fix. They're just bugs with 7.0. One of the things is that you should always import all of your configuration except for called and calling party transformations. And when you do import everything, you should click the override existing configuration button. Then you should go back and one at a time import your called and calling configuration. In other words, do 2 more imports, but just of each one of those checkboxes at a time, and do not click override. This is just due to a bug where they happen to, if imported together with the override configuration button, they happen to normally one overrides the other, and called party transformation patterns end up in calling party end up in the called party. So it's just a little bit of a mess, a little bit of a bug, but you can avoid it by using the method I just mentioned. Also, another thing, any SIP trunks almost always get imported with their significant digits for inbound call routing set to all rather than whatever else you would set them. H323 and MGCP gateways get imported with the proper significant number of digits, but it's not that we exported them improperly. It's just that another bug. You just need to go back to your SIP trunk and change your SIG digits to 4. You also need to reset every gateway every time you do this, every time you do an import. Also, one other thing we note in the video is that sometimes calling search spaces don't have partitions imported with the calling search spaces don't have the partitions imported properly. This is just due to the order in which they import. They almost always do work properly, but if they don't, you may just need to do another import over on top of each other. These things really don't take a lot of time. They're just some considerations to keep in mind, and really they're the only way that we can provide you with the full configuration, either startup or final with the working configs of the CUCM server, without doing something like taking a VMware snapshot and then handing it out to you, which first of all, the VMware snapshot would probably be anywhere, they tend to be anywhere from 2 to 5 gigs for just the snapshot, not to mention the rest of the virtual server. So we're talking we'd have to hand out 30 gig files, and obviously that's not very feasible for download to have a 30 gig file for publisher and then another one for subscriber for every single, and then the snapshots, so another maybe 2 to 5 gig per snapshot, so initial and final of pub and sub. So now we're talking 32, 34, 68 to 70 gig just for your CUCM pub and sub, and do that for every single deep dive. It's obviously not practical in any way. And if we don't hand these out to you, well, then how are you going to practice on your own racks if you, a lot of students, a lot of you guys do have your own rack of equipment. Okay, so this is the reason that we do the exported CSV file. It's very lightweight, typically under 300K, and the few little things that we have to go through to make it work properly really are worth, if you ask me, they are worth even my own doing. In fact, that's the way I do it. I don't use any VMware snapshots. Reliable, and they are much quicker to import and deal with. So than VMware snapshots that I've used in the past. One other thing is that the LDAP does not import properly. Whenever we import the LDAP settings, it almost never imports properly. So we actually don't include the end user LDAP directory or LDAP authentication imports or any of the end users, because those are not created. They are imported from the Microsoft Active Directory LDAP. So actually that's one of the things I saved for this particular lab. We're going to go through and re-import those users. We haven't done that in most of the previous labs, and one of the reasons we will do it today and on any deep dive is to remind you that you need to do it, but I should say on any deep dive that specifically the components, the technologies in the deep dive rely on end user configuration. That's where the README LDAP is important. Okay. Also, in the last deep dive module, we changed our SIP trunk to point to DNS SRV records rather than IP addresses. This means that you'll need to SSH into your pub and sub and reissue this command and reboot both of them. It is good to reboot both of them after you do your import anyhow, but I've actually gone ahead and taken out this task, and I've just put in IP addresses back in our SIP trunks rather than relying on domain names. That way you don't have to do this set DNS primary command. However, this is certainly something you could have to do in the real lab. They may have a SIP trunk set up for you with DNS or even just a host name in a MGCP gateway, or they could tell you that you need to configure an MGCP or H323 gateway or a SIP trunk using host names, using domain names, and they might give you the IP address of the DNS server or have you set the DNS server up yourself, and the only one that you would have available to you is on the UCCX Windows platform, still in version 7, the DNS server there. But you do have one available to you, and you could set it up, and they very well may not have, as part of your expert level task that they expect you to demonstrate to them your expertise, they may not have set anything up in the set network DNS primary or set up the CUCM pub and sub to actually point to the so this is a very real-world task, something you could be asked to do as well. So keep that in mind. Okay? And if you're not using our racks, then be sure to apply these router and CUCM startup configs to your own lab hardware before beginning. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and bring up our CUCM cluster. Let's log in. And then let's bring up the LDAP README file that we include with each deep dive. Yep. We mention everything that we've just talked about, and we give you the 4 LDAP directories that we had created, and then how to do the LDAP authentication. What we had done, I believe it was back in Deep Dive Module 4 when we discussed users, groups, and LDAP. So let's just do that real quick. Let's go over to System. First of all, let's check our users. End users. Click Find. There are none, but we also don't see anywhere up here the ability to add a user. That's because over on system LDAP, LDAP system, so system column and then LDAP and then the LDAP system, it is already checked to enable synchronization. Okay, so this does import properly. However, so as soon as we enable synchronization, we disable our ability to add new users. If I uncheck this and click Save, now I would be able to go back to End User and add a new user. Save, and this is when no longer add a new user. Okay? So we'll go to LDAP directory, do a find. There are none because we didn't import any. Users will not found in the corporate directory will be deleted. That's okay because we don't have any. For the correct integration with LDAP users, it's necessary that the user ID attribute is unique. Okay, we already know that from Module 4. And we give you all of the information to use. So we'll just copy. At ine.com. The LDAP password is CCIE Cisco. Paste that in twice to confirm. And then we give you the user search base. Okay, we also tell you that IP phone should be synchronized for phone number. So let's change that. And the LDAP server information. Now note from the original LDAP Module 4, this IP changed, and I've recorded an intro that should be at the beginning of this recorded module once it is recorded and available as a curriculum. Okay, we leave the port 389 and use SSL unchecked, and we click Save. Now this will not show add successful if it could not log in with this username and password to this search base. So this means that it was truly successful in going out and verifying that this exists. Now no users, open this in a new window, no users exist yet. That's just because we need to perform a full sync now. We're going to go ahead and copy this while we wait for these to be synced. They should probably be done by about now, and there we've got some records. Okay, so we're going to copy this, and the next one was INE. So we will change search base, username, password, and IP phone and server got populated for us with the copy. So that was nice. We'll perform a full sync. Okay. We'll do another copy. This third one was security. Grab the user search base. Save. Perform full sync. Okay. We'll copy and do the, oh, I skipped over one, did I? IT, sales, and security. Yeah, I skipped over the first one, which was executive. Okay. Back. Let's just verify. IT, sales is sales, security is security. Of these, copy it, paste it, grab the new search base. First OU really changes. Save, perform full. Now if we do a find of our users, we should have a lot more. Yep, 22 records. Excellent. We're only going to need 2 of them today, but we will need them. And then, although we probably won't need, actually we will not need this today. Actually we will. So we'll use LDAP for authentication for end users. Bottom. Text file that we include for all of the specifics. And note for our search base, as we mentioned back in Module 4, we're only searching the OU of Island Natural Exports. We're not searching any of the sub-OUs of IT, security, sales, R&D, executive, or any of the others that we have. This way, we're including all of those sub-organizational units. Save. And now we should be good for LDAP authentication. As soon as we turned on LDAP authentication, what happened was the user's ability to save a password became unavailable from our DC directory or here in our CUCM server, although we still can do pin and control devices and things of that nature. Okay, so we'll go back to the beginning. Set up our LDAP, and we're ready to begin. So now let's take a look at our first task, 12.1, Mobile Connect Basics. We're told to configure CUCM such that when either Hugo, known as Hurley, Reyes, is corporate directory phone 2 at the DN of 1002, or when James, also known as Sawyer, Ford's branch 2 phone 2 at the DN of 3002 are called, that their corresponding mobile phones are rung, but only after their desk phone rings fully once. Also, we're told when Hurley's corporate headquarter phone 2 is rung, we're told to ring his home phone as well. We're given this information here, and we're told from the information below, calculate the time that it takes those mobile phones and home phones to ring to voicemail, and prevent this mechanism from ringing into any of their respective voicemail boxes. So it sounds like their mobile phones and home phones have voicemail set up on them. Let's just test that out briefly. Go over to our remote phones, and let's have James Ford call out, and we'll also bring up our routers where we've got bug ISDN and turn on turned on to all of them. So we'll have James Ford, who's in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. We'll have him call out his local gateway to his mobile phone. So his mobile phone is, it's actually a long distance number, 0 for long distance, 0 for secondary dial tone, if you remember from previous modules, and then 670357575. And we see that that appears here on line 6 of our PSTN phone. Also, we have Hurley's mobile and Hurley's home phone corresponding. Okay, so let's have James call out to that number. Okay, go off hook, dial 0, 0, and we'll have him dial 670357575. It took too long for this to enter, so let's try this again. There was a slight delay, so let's dial 0, 0, 670357575. Okay, he's not able to dial right now. Let's just see if he can dial 112. Okay, he can dial out to, it might be that this user doesn't have rights to dial out there. Let's try it from Desmond's phone at 3001. 00 670357575. There we go. So we're ringing to mobile. Voicemail. You've reached either Sawyer or Hurley. Okay, so we heard his voicemail recording saying that you've reached either Sawyer or Hurley's voicemail, and if you're hearing this, it's too late. So it forwarded after 3 rings. Well, let's just do that again. Let's just make sure it was 3 rings proper. So let's do redial. Really, we have to listen for that was actually me hitting the up and down volume button that you might have heard somewhat of a 4th ring. So apologize for doing that at just the wrong time, but it did ring after 3 rings. Let's test out Hurley's home phone as well. Okay, so let's up to Jack's phone at corporate headquarters 1001, and we'll dial 9, the local number 206-501-5151. Get ringing in on Hurley's mobile line. So there's 2. Should go to voicemail after 3 rings. Okay, so it went after 3 rings. So now let's try Hurley's mobile. That's 1. That's 2. 3. That's 4. Okay. We got the calls. It does ring to Hurley's mobile voicemail after 4 rings, to Hurley's home after 3, and to Sawyer's home after 3. So we can calculate the time. We pretty much know that a ring is just about, and it depends on, of course, the ring cadence, but it's just about with the standard default ring cadence that CUCM, or actually CME, because the PSTN phone is on CME, has, is about 4 seconds per ring. So we know that this is about 16 seconds, and these are about 12. And we can make variations and adjustments if we need to, but we'll go on that premise. Okay, so we're told to prevent this mechanism, the mobile connect mechanism, from ringing into any of their respective voicemail boxes at their mobiles. This is what's known as single enterprise voicemail box. Now we mentioned that in our CUCM cluster, at our desk phones, we don't have actually Unity connection set up for this particular deep dive module. That being said, we would have forward call to voicemail on busy or no answer set on our line of our standard phone, our IP desk phone, and then also the line that is associated as a shared line to our remote destination profile, our virtual phone that we showed from the slides and the concepts. So the idea is we don't want the call to go to our mobile voicemail when one call comes in and then another call comes in at a different time based on our ring schedule we'll look at next, and it goes to our home phone, gets left on that voicemail, and then at another time all the ring destinations are turned off via a ring schedule, and so then the third voicemail gets left at our enterprise desk phone voicemail. We've got 3 different calls, possibly from different callers, left at 3 different voicemail boxes. This can be not only rather confusing, but let's say if a voicemail gets left, or too many get left at our home, it's going to perturb other people that happen to live in our home and have to go through the voicemails and don't want to listen to work calls. Okay, so the idea is that we want everything to ring to our single enterprise voicemail box that is attached or associated with our desk phone, so our Unity connection or Unity, whatever voicemail system we happen to be using, to that enterprise voicemail. And the way that we have the single enterprise voicemail is to prevent the unified or mobile connect mechanism from ringing any of these mobile or remote destination numbers long enough so that the call is answered by the voicemail. Because if the call was answered by their mobile voicemail, Mobile Connect just knows, hey, we connected. We were told to ring a remote destination and the desk phone, maybe multiple remote destinations and the desk phone, all concurrently, and someone connected. So we're good. It doesn't distinguish between a voicemail system connecting and a human connecting. Now, so that's all fine and good. We can tell it not to ring long enough to one of those remote destinations in order to ring into that associated remote destination device voicemail. So we have single enterprise unified voicemail box. That's all fine and good. But what about the times when we jump on a flight, or we're underground on the tube, or at a train, or we're out of touch, out of reach, or we just happen to turn off our mobile phone? And Mobile Connect was set to extend the call to our mobile phone during that particular time and from that particular caller. So our mobile phone is turned off. What happens when your mobile phone is turned off and someone calls it? That's right. That's exactly right. Your response is exactly right. It rings directly to voicemail. So when it rings directly to voicemail, it's answered almost immediately. How do we prevent this? Well, forwarding it to voicemail after 4 rings, we said we were going to put in a timer that was less than 4 rings, so less than 16 seconds. So we'll do maybe something like 15 or 14 seconds, maybe 15 seconds, just to give it just enough time to ring and enough time that they can pick it up, or as much time as we can possibly give the remote destination time to pick it up without going into their voicemail. But we don't want any call that's answered immediately to be allowed to continue. So the first one was known as the answer too late timer. If they answer too late, we're not going to allow them to, we're not going to allow that Mobile Connect call to be connected. We'll stop it. We'll stop it ringing, stop it alerting before it's too late. That's the answer too late timer. If we had our phones off, mobile phone or our home phone was set to forward directly to voicemail because we wanted a quiet morning or whatever, then it would be answered too early. So there's also a default answer too early timer. If the call's answered too early, and we'll take a look at this with the RTMT, with our RTMT performance monitor statistics, as we have with many other things. If that happens, then we also want the call to be immediately disconnected from that remote destination, not allow the calling party to ultimately be connected to that remote destination, because we know that a human couldn't have answered in that amount of time. Okay? So looking on, we're also told to allow either Hurley or Sawyer to be able to transfer calls from their mobile phones back to their desk phones. So we mentioned earlier that that was simply hanging up at their mobile phone, and it would be on hold at their desk phone for a period of time. But then also to be allowed from their desk phones to transfer calls back to their mobile phones with a single button. So this is the soft key, send call to mobile, that we're going to be able to enter, but of course we have to configure that soft key. Then we're also told to allow either user to be able to log in to their CUCM user page and set up or change any of their Mobile Connect remote phones. That's right, we can give users the ability to set up their own mobile phones. However, we're told to only allow Sawyer to be able to have a maximum of 1 remote phone. So he could change the number that he has existing that we set up as an administrator. Maybe he changed his mobile phone, got a different plan, different carrier, different SIM, but he can't add multiple remote phones. No such restriction for Hurley. Okay, so let's get into the configuration of it. So we're going to bring up CUCM, and one of the first things we're going to do is we are going to take a look at our users. We're going to be using user H. Reyes, Hugo Reyes, also known as Hurley, and James Ford, also known as Sawyer. So let's go ahead and associate them with their primary desk phones. And we know that H. Reyes, is that the user I was on? I believe so. Yep. Is headquarter phone phone number 2, so DN1002. That's primary desk phone user device that we'll go ahead and associate him as. Scroll down, we're going to enable mobility. Now, Our primary end user device was ending in Foxtrot 1 Delta Echo. There we go. And we'll probably want to enable mobile voice access, but that's something separate, so we'll wait until we get to that task. Here's the maximum wait time for desk phone pickup. So here, when we mentioned that we want to allow Hurley or Sawyer to be able to transfer their calls from their mobile phones back to their desk phones. And we mentioned that this was simply hanging up that remote mobile phone, and it would be allowed to ring at their desk phone. This is the maximum wait time for it to ring, I'm sorry, not ring, my fault, to be held at their desk phone. And most everything in this module is going to be in milliseconds. So if we put a comma there, or then we see that this is 10,000 milliseconds. So this is actually 10 seconds. So if we wanted it to be available for 30 seconds, I think I said 30 was the default. I was wrong. It's 10. We'd change this to 30,000 milliseconds. But we'll leave it at 10. That's going to be fine for now. And here is the remote destination limit. So how many remote destinations is each user allowed to have associated to them? Now, we didn't say there was any restriction for Hugo, so we're just going to leave it at 4. For Sawyer, we were told only to allow a maximum of 1 remote phone. So that's where we will change this value to 1 for Sawyer. And we also need to add Hurley to a group. That group contains end users, standard CCM end user. And the reason for this, we'll click Save. Associated with this primary device, let's give him a primary extension, 1002, although probably not necessary for this task. Got the remote wait time for hold, remote destination limit of 4, which is fine, and standard CCM end users, so that he's got CCM user administration so that he can log in to his user page and change his remote destinations. And we'll look at that later after we've set up some remote destinations. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go back to our users and grab James Ford, also known as Sawyer, and we'll do the same thing, device association. He's at branch 2, phone 2, so 3002. Save his primary device. Go back to the user. His device ends in 1alpha93. Give him a primary extension. Enable mobility. The 1alpha93 primary user device. Change his remote destination limit to 1. And then add him to the group standard CCM end users. Click Save. I'll just go back and verify everything. Okay, 1alpha93. Got our primary extension, enable mobility with 1alpha93 as the primary user device, standard CCM, and end users. Okay. So we've taken care of the user. We've taken care of allowing them to log in, and Sawyer being able to only have 1. Let's add a soft key. So we really had to do the user before we can create some of the other things. So let's go to device settings, and soft key template. And let's actually check out before, opening a new window here, or a new tab, before we actually modify. I believe they all have the module 3 enhanced user soft key template, but let's just verify. Let's just open each of these. I'm just holding down Control or Command on a Mac. Phone configuration, yep, module 3. One, module 3 soft key. Next one, module 3 enhanced user, module 3 enhanced user. Yep, so they're all using module 3 enhanced user. Jump into this one. They all already are using. We will configure the soft key layout for the application Cisco Call Manager. Okay, so let's grab the mobility soft key, and we'll bring that over. We want to keep it on the first page. They will have to actually press services before they can press their soft key. So technically, I suppose it's 2 buttons, but it would be very likely, whoops, I accidentally went back without saving. This could be something that the lab might refer to as 1 button, send to mobile phone, even if you do technically have to press services and then the mobility soft key. So when in doubt, ask the proctor for clarification. That's what they're there for. Here with 1 button, this is what we mean. Save. And we'll look at each one of these to see where is mobility an option. Connected, it obviously is. And we want to put it right after transfer. Actually, no, we're going to want to bump it up even 1 more, because on most phones, except for the larger display phones, they only have 4 soft keys. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3, and then more. And then 1, 2, 3, and then more. 1, 2, 3. So if we actually had this down here, it would show up on the first button of the 2nd page. Okay, we'll click Save. And we'll just look through all of these. There shouldn't really be any others that have mobility, but we'll look through all the states just to make sure that we're not missing anything. It doesn't take us that long to go through them. After first, connected conference. I'm just looking over here in the unselected soft keys for mobility, ring out, off hook with feature, remote in use, and connected no feature. And I believe, yeah, on hook and then also connected are the only 2 that now have. And by the way, on hook, it's the 4th soft key, but unless we have more than 4, then more doesn't show up. It only shows up when we have more than 4, that position. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and reset all of the devices and restart all of the devices that had that soft key associated with them, and we see our devices beginning to be reset. Okay, so we'll let those restart. So now we've taken care of the last 2 bullets kind of first. All right, so now we need to go and set up our actual remote destination profile. Now we're going to go to Device, Device Settings, Remote Destination Profile, and we shouldn't have any to begin with. So we'll add a new one, and we'll call this one RDP for Remote Destination Profile _ Hurley. Yeah, let's just call it Hurley's RDs. Now, let's just call it Remote Destination Hurley, Corporate Headquarter Phone 2. That looks good. Okay, description. This is an RDP for Hurley's remote phone. User ID is HReyes. Device pool, we're going to have this the same as the device pool for our desk phone. Now again, we don't have to, but we're going to choose to. This is where our MRGL will be chosen, the Media Resource Group list, to look for media resources such as a conference bridge when we go to do that later, or a music on hold server. And really we don't have to specify these user and network hold sources if they've been specified at the device pool level. Or sorry, or if it's probably just a good idea to go ahead and do it. They are by default in the system service parameters set to the index of 1. But if there were multiple, then we would have to do it. So it's just a good idea to go ahead and do it. We can also set it the line, and because I opened that in a new window, this isn't going to save properly. We also have privacy, which we're just going to leave to off, or we can just, leave it to off or default or whatever for the time being. We'll take a look at that a little bit more a little bit later. Calling party transformation, we're going to take a look at that in a future task for localization. Uncheck use device pool for right now. And then we've got two calling search spaces here. Our calling search space and our rerouting calling search space. Now, our calling search space is typically used, I shouldn't say typically, whenever we see a calling search space on a device, whether it's a gateway or a phone. If you remember back to Module 9, calling search spaces are only invoked when a call is ingress in that device. Okay, so if it's on a phone, then it's only when the call is coming in from the phone and then out to either another phone or out to a PSTN number, but it's when the call is coming into Call Manager from the phone that we look at the calling search space. When a call is being presented out or egress to a phone, we don't look at its calling search space. We look at the partition that the DN is a part of. We match that with the calling search space of the calling party's device, maybe inbound from a gateway or ingress through another IP phone. Calling search space here with remote destination profile is no different. So this is not used when we are trying to reroute a call that's also ringing at our desk phone, reroute it out to a PSTN remote destination. That is what the rerouting calling search space is used for. The calling search space is used when we are placing a call in through our remote destination profile. When is that? That's when we're calling in through mobile voice access, or what we're not going to use today, enterprise feature access for smartphones. When we're calling in through mobile voice access and doing two-stage dialing, calling back to another location, that's when this calling search space can be looked at. So we'll take a look at that later. We're not going to configure anything for calling search space. We're going to be very specific on what we do and do not configure, and only do what we need to at the time that we need to, such as not enabling mobile voice access checkbox on any of the users, so that we can distinguish and truly be experts and know what exactly functions for what phase of our needed configuration or needed results. We will, however, configure the rerouting calling search space. Otherwise, we'll use the null or none calling search space, which will only have the none partition, to try to find DNs or try to find patterns to match with our remote destinations. And of course, we won't find any. So let's go take a look at our translation patterns, or our PSTN patterns. Now we note that if we look at the ones that begin with 0, we're calling from the Netherlands, or the ones that begin with 9 from calling anywhere in the US, those are all fine and good. We could look at the partitions there and try to find a calling search space that has those partitions already. But remember that our remote destinations we're going to want to configure, as we learned in Module 11 and 10 for globalization and localization, we're going to want to configure those with full E164 numbers. So we're going to look at translation patterns that begin with \+. And we see that the ones that we're going to want to dial primarily, either plus patterns, +1 206, 1512, 1312, those all belong in the partition for dial device, either US or dial device Netherlands. Now, there's internal directory. We had used those to look at globalizing numbers for directory numbers, and then there's also restricted ones. But again, we're going to want to dial things from a device level to the ones that actually ring. Okay, the ones that actually route, I should say. So if I looked at the same plus pattern, one is in dial device Netherlands, route this pattern. The other is in block line Netherlands, block this pattern. So I'm going to want the dial, but I'm not going to want Netherlands, I'm going to want the one for the US, because this remote destination profile is for Hurley, which is at corporate headquarter phone 2. He's in the US. So we want the calling search space for dial device US. And let's just go check to make sure that calling search space, open a new tab, has the proper, let's just CSS contains US. Dial device US has the partition for dial device US, which is what the translation pattern is. So we're good there, and we've got the proper CSS. Now remember, the remote destination profile is the virtual device, not the line, the virtual device. So when we look back to Module 9, line device approach, this is the device level CSS that allows everything. And Hurley didn't, well, no one had any restrictions yet, but when we look at restrictions in a little bit, and Sawyer's going to have a restriction, we'll just make sure that his line has the restriction on it, but his device will still allow calls. It'll just allow them to the Netherlands because he's at branch 2. But for Hurley at headquarters, we'll allow device US. We'll go ahead and click save, and it won't work properly, but we'll click save again. It should add successful. And now we see that we've got a new field, associate remote destination, and add a DN. We've also got this do not disturb option. Okay, so we can actually turn on do not disturb for an entire remote destination profile. Now, this is not the same as turning off or disabling one or all of your remote destinations. This is disabling essentially the entire remote destination profile or virtual device. And if you give it a DND option of call reject, if you remember back to, I think it was Module 5 for call features, call reject as opposed to the standard device option of, what was it? Look at a standard phone, grab corporate headquarter phone 2, take a look at the do not disturb. The traditional option is ringer off. That's the default. When we have it changed to call reject and we have do not disturb enabled, then the call goes to voicemail. Well, if we're rejecting the call from one of the shared lines or one of the shared line devices, then the call should just go right to voicemail. I'm actually going to go back out to the list and jump back into this. Otherwise, we'll have a problem with saving this. Okay, so now we'll add our new DN. And our DN is 1002. Fresh, we'll choose our partition. We want the same partition as our primary phone DN is in. This way, this will show up a device association and a shared line. So here we see that this is already associated with one of these devices. So let's go ahead and click save. As soon as we click save, now we'll see that it's associated with 2 devices. Hurley's RDP, remote destination profile virtual device, and also the primary desk phone device. Now if we scroll down, we see that our line 1, so the DN of 1002 as it pertains to the device RDP is known as line 1 on this RDP, and it doesn't currently have any caller ID or external phone number mask. Now we could go fill all this in, or we see this update shared device settings. We don't want to click these and click propagate because we'll propagate what we have, which is nothing, over to the desk phone, which does have something. Instead, we'll scroll back up, click on the desk phone, click on edit line appearance for that particular device, scroll down, and now we do have all of these. Now the line text label doesn't matter because it doesn't show up on the other because there is no line text because it's a virtual device. But we will at least, and we could just go ahead and do all of them, no problem. We'll click all of these checkboxes and say propagate selected. Update failed. for some devices, see the log for a list of failed devices. Right? Well, let's figure out why. Let's go back into the line. We're on our, because we had been modifying it for the desk phone, we're currently on that device. So let's scroll down. Let's actually go back and click on RDP, Edit Line Appearance. Scroll down, and it didn't take effect. All right, well, let's go ahead and go back out to Configure Device RDP. Not sure why it didn't. Let's try it again. Click on the desk phone, Edit Line Appearance. Check the 3 that we know exist. Propagate the selected. There we go. Now we didn't have an issue. We're still on the Foxtrot 1 Delta Echo hardware desk phone. We'll go over to RDP, Edit Line Appearance. Okay, now everything propagated properly. So I'm not sure why the error on the first time, but it worked when we did it the second time. Okay, so we've got all that set up. We've got our AR destination mask. Everything else is our call pickup group. Everything else is proper. Okay, so now we're going to go back out to our RDP device. And we've now got enough for our virtual device that we can go ahead and add our rerouting calling search space didn't stick. That again and click Save. Oh, sorry, that was the calling party transformation. There we go. Certainly don't want those to get mixed up. Okay. So we'll come back to these when we do mobile voice access and come back to this when we do localization. For now, we're done with our virtual device and we need to add a remote destination. The name of this remote destination is going to be Hurley's Mobile. Destination number, as we saw, is going to be spaces +1 206 501 quadruple 5. Here we've got our answer too soon timer. So 1500 milliseconds or 1.5 seconds. If someone answers the call within 1.5 seconds, probably a machine, probably went to voicemail, the mobile's probably off. Don't let it extend the call because we want single unified enterprise voicemail box. The answer too late timer. So this is kind of like a don't let it forward no answer too long. Same thing as we would do with when we're setting up UCCX agents, how we would not want the UCCX RMCM system, or ICD system rather, to extend a call out to an agent long enough to get to their voicemail box. We would want to put the calling party back in queue, much to their dismay. This is the same concept. So we saw that for Hurley's Mobile, it rang after 4 rings, or 16 seconds to voicemail. So we want to change this default 19 seconds down to 14. Now let's just discuss why it is actually 19 seconds or 19,000 milliseconds by default. 19, if we think that 4 seconds is roughly 1 ring, then 4 times 5 would be 20,000, right? So 20,000 seconds would be 5 rings. Most mobile phones either go to voicemail within 3 or 4 rings, so either 12,000 or 16,000. So why 20? Or rather, why 1 second below 5 rings? This is because when we're dealing with a proper mobile cellular network, GSM or CDMA, we have to actually allow the cellular network to establish the call, and that typically takes about a full ring to just get the call established to the point where we've the cell company has triangulated the mobile phone and it's now begun to ring the phone. So it's already been ringing at the desk phone typically for about a full second before it rings into the mobile phone. Also, on top of that, we've got this delay before ringing timer. Now this is set to 4,000 or 4 seconds or 1 ring. This is actually meeting the requirement where we said here that their corresponding mobile phones are rung, but only after their desk phone rings fully once. Well, this is already the default. Ringing fully once, and then we're going to try to ring this remote destination. Okay, now we could change this to 0, and it would ring immediately. And for testing, maybe you would want to do that, as long as you remember to come back and change it back. Maybe they would have you do something else. The default is actually what we're asking you to have it do by default. But in our lab, we don't actually have a real GSM network, and you wouldn't in the real lab as well. So because it's all local, we have ISDN really back-to-back. There is no cellular network trying to establish a call through GSM. Then it's going to ring immediately whenever we tell it to. Now, it's going to wait a full ring at the desk phone, but once it does that, when it actually begins extending the call to this remote destination, it's going to begin ringing immediately. Because of that, we're not going to want the answer too late timer to include the time it takes the cell company to, or mobile carrier to set up the call to that mobile phone. So we're going to reduce this. As we had said, 4 rings. When it goes to voicemail, 16 seconds. We're going to reduce it to 1 second below that, or 15 seconds, 15,000 milliseconds. Okay, so that's the rationale behind that. The RDP that we're tied to. This is our mobile phone. So we're going to click mobile phone, and we want to enable Mobile Connect. And we'll get to the rest of this later. Go ahead and press save. And it says the Enable Mobile Connect checkbox is selected. Please check that the phone associated with this user has the mobile soft key configured, which of course we already did. We just have to say OK to this every time we press save on a remote destination. So now we see all of this information is the same, but we also have the DN that we're associated with. We have to click line association save, and now we're done with this remote destination. Now we'll go to copy, and we'll change this so that we still have our line association. We'll change this to Hurley's home phone. Destination here is +1 206 501 5151. Too late, 3 rings at the home phone. So we're going to want this not 12 seconds, but 11 seconds. Whoops. 1 second under when it should ring to voicemail. Now, if I leave mobile phone checked and enable Mobile Connect, watch what happens. I'm going to click save. Okay, so let's go back out to find list of remote destinations so we can see this mobile phone. We'll click find. We've got Hurley's home and Hurley's mobile. Let's jump into Hurley's home, the one we just configured. Mobile phone is checked. Okay, let's go back to find and click Hurley's mobile. Oh, mobile phone is also checked. This is interesting. Shouldn't actually allow this to stay checked. So let's go back to Hurley's home. Phone. Okay, go back to Hurley's mobile. Save. This should uncheck Hurley's home. Okay, they've updated it so you can have multiple mobile phones. Again, we don't want this checked unless it's actually the person's mobile, because whenever I click the soft key, send to mobile, it will send it to, or it will actually go and attempt to ring, I guess now, all of the phones that are marked as mobiles. Okay, so Hurley's home is not a mobile phone. Oops. And when we did this, it unassociated the line. Reassociate the line. It's a lot of saving, going back and forth. All right, let's make sure the number is still proper. 5151, 11 seconds, no mobile phone, line association, update successful, good. Go back to Hurley's mobile. Mobile phone, line association, RDP, 15 seconds versus 16, quadruple 5, We're good. Okay, so now everything is proper. So at this point, we need to set up Sawyer's RDP and remote destination, but we should be able to test Hurley's immediately. But we'll go ahead and set up Sawyer's, and then we'll do all of our testing. So right now, we're here at Device Remote Destination. Now, we originally went to Device Settings, Remote Destination Profile, and it was when we set up this that we were able to click in, add a remote destination from there. So that's how we jumped over. Oops. We want to do an RDP for format, right? So it's actually branch 2, and Sawyer, branch 2, phone 2. Description, this is Sawyer's. Phones, let's say. The user ID is J Ford. The device pool is branch 2. We want that to be checked for MRGLs, for conferencing and whatever else. Calling search space we'll do later at mobile voice access. Choose the sample audio source for user and network. Privacy we'll leave off. Rerouting calling search space we want to be dial Netherlands PSTN. And no calling party transformation CSS right now. Add a new DN, 3002. Proper internal DN partition, so it shows up as a shared device. We see the 1alpha93 desk phone. We'll go ahead and click Save. Now we see that it's a shared line. We'll edit the line appearance on the desk phone, scroll to the bottom, and choose shared device settings that we wish to propagate. Go back to the line appearance on our RDP. Now that we're on our RDP device line, we should have the display for caller ID and the external phone number mask. These are going to be important because when we make calls into mobile voice access later and we wish for them to be seen coming from the proper person, if we don't have this external phone number mask and the translation pattern that we dial through says to use it, well then there's nothing there, and we'll simply have a calling number that comes from 3002. And that will very likely not be reachable by anyone on the PSTN, or most certainly not reachable. So, and depending on what gateway we go out, it could be different for every single one. So we want that external phone number mask set properly. Okay, and also our CNAM, or calling ID display. So now we've got our partition, our shared line in the proper partition, shared device, proper calling party ID and name, and now we need to add a new remote destination. So we'll say that this one is Sawyer's mobile. The destination number will copy. Again, we're going to want to use globalized format. It is greatly going to simplify your life in many ways. And Sawyer's phone rang after 3 rings to voicemail, so we'll take this not to 12, which is 3 rings, but to 11 seconds. Ring at his desk a full ring before going to his remote destination. Mobile phone, this is, and enable mobile connect. Click line association and save. We've completed setting up the basics of mobile connect for both Hurley and Sawyer. So they've got their remote destinations and their remote destination profiles. Now these are the ones that are associated with the users. Still actually need to go to the device and associate their owner user ID. So this is for corporate headquarter phone 2, so H. Reyes. Anything else on here that we're missing? Device mobility mode, that's for the next module. Everything else looks good. Let's save this phone. Start it. Go back to branch 2, phone 2. ID of J. Ford. Save it. Set. Restart. Go back to our end users. And F. Actually, F. James. That he... we need to go back and do device association. Nope, sorry. We don't do that to RDPs. Default. There we go. See that his remote destination profile is linked now. And then let's also just go check. Go Hurley Reyes. Check that his remote destination profile is automatically linked. Okay? So did that when we went to the remote destination profile and associated it to the user. So now, before we test anything, let's go and see if we can actually log in, log out, and we'll log back into CCM user. Our unified CM user options. We'll log in as H. Reyes. Password is Cisco, of course. We're going to log in and look at mobility settings, remote destinations, and see that Hurley has 2, his home and his mobile. Jump into it. We could change it if we want. All right, let's just change it to 6. We'll change it right back. And show that we do have the rights. Update was successful to be able to change it. Okay, and can add a new one if we want. Name test 555 and click save. Line association save. So now we have 3. We're going to go ahead and delete this one. But we just want to show that we have the ability to be able to do it. We'll click log out. And that would show up in the admin page as well, of course. Now we're going to log in as J. Ford. So Sawyer's login. Now we're going to go to mobility settings, remote destinations. We have our 1. We're going to click add new. We'll do test 234, enable, save. Oops, RDP is required. Have that on the last one. Add failed, remote destination. We didn't because we copied it. Remote destination cannot be added because the remote destination limit set by the administrator for this end user account has already been reached. So that meets the requirements where Sawyer cannot add any more. He could, however, change it. So let's change this last one to a 9. We'll click save. Go ahead and log out. We'll go back to our CCM admin login. Log in. Look at our remote destinations just to verify that Sawyer did have the ability to change his number, and sure enough, the last digit is a 9. Jump in and change it back to a 5 like it should have been, and click save. So he can modify his 1, but he cannot add an additional one. Okay, I think it's time to change. Time to test. All right, so let's go ahead and minimize this. Done a few resets. of our phones here. I'll just go ahead and do all of them just to be sure. Already got all their extensions in, and they're already logged in through AXL, so what I have to do is hit search again and then control again once it comes back up. Okay. Most of our phones are back. One didn't control properly. There we go. Last one, connect. All right, so now it's time to test. So these are the phones that we're wishing to have be called. That's Ford and Reyes. Those. PSTN phone. And let's begin by calling from Desmond's phone 3001. So we'll go off hook, and we're going to dial 1002. Now we can hear it already ringing and see it ringing here at 1002.
Are you there?
And after one full ring, now the call comes in on both Hurley's mobile and his home phone. We can see both ringing. Now let's see if it goes to voicemail. Okay, so it stopped ringing on the PSTN phone before it went to voicemail. This is good. Let's go ahead and hang up. Let's just see what would have happened if at Hurley's home we would have changed the answer too late timer to, let's say, 15 seconds. All right, let's try this call again. Play catches up. Okay, so it's ringing at his home and mobile. So the call's no longer here at his desk phone. It's no longer at his PSTN phone, and this message will repeat. So
Reached either Sawyer or Hurley's voicemail.
original calling party did get connected, but they got connected to the mobile, or I think we changed the home phone to their voicemail. Yeah, we changed his home phone. So let's jump back to 11 seconds. So again, in these deep dives, we want to show the, contrast what's not working from what is working. So we did it properly the first time, and it worked. And now we've just changed it back, and we'll go ahead and try to dial again. 2. Once at the desk, then
Are you there?
begins ringing at the PSTN. Don't want it to go to voicemail, so it should stop ringing at both PSTN phones here shortly. One stopped ringing, home, and one, his mobile, had one additional ring. Now neither are ringing, but it is still ringing at his desk phone. So if his desk phone had voicemail set up, then it would go to his desk phone voicemail, a single enterprise voicemail box. And by the way, this is the reason that we did not set up voicemail would differentiate between hearing the mobile and home voicemail out on the PSTN, not hearing our get confusing in terms of the recorded prompt. Okay, so everything's set up properly. Let's see where the call went out. Now it looks like the call went out. To the headquarter gateway at one point, and also it went out internationally to the through the Netherlands gateway. That's 112 when we were testing a while ago. Actually, some of these could have been when we were just testing the primary dialing. So let's actually go ahead and clear off our scroll back buffer of all of our routers. And let's try this Mobile Connect again just to see what happens when we call from Desmond's 2001.
Are you there?
Calls out to the PSTN, and it goes out router 3. It's making an international call. It's actually making 2 of them. So what we're to understand from this is that when Desmond, who's in the Netherlands, goes to make a standard call to another internal DN 1002, that single number reach or Mobile Connect is actually placing 2 calls out to Hurley's mobile and to his home phone, just like we wanted him to. But that's actually going out Desmond's local Netherlands gateway, and it's placing 2 international calls, 00 and then the country code 1, and then the rest of the digits. That's going to be really expensive every time Desmond goes to ring Hurley's phone. Okay, so that might not be the functionality that we desire, although we really haven't been told to do anything about it. We're just kind of pointing out the way it's happening right now, just so that we know what is going on. Also, take a look at the calling party number. It's 3001. Let's do the call again real quick just to see the PSTN phone. So the PSTN phone sees 3001. Now, 3001 to Hurley's mobile maybe makes sense, but what if, I don't know. First of all, not every carrier would allow you to send out, calling ID, CLID, ANI, however you want to look at it, your calling number to be anything other than a DID range that you actually own at that particular site. And 3001 is not a valid DID number. 020703 3001 is a valid DID number at that gateway, but not just 3001, 2002 or whatever. So because of that, we may need to change it, but also just so that the receiving party do it properly is. Now maybe they do want to see 3001. It just depends on what your user's requirements are, or in the lab, what the lab requirements are. But for right now, we haven't been told to do anything about it. Again, I'm just pointing it out. Clear off this gateway so that we can differentiate it from other tasks. So let's try the same thing to the DN of 3002. Okay, so let's call call 3002. So you heard it ring once before you see the display catch up. And now the PSTN is calling and ringing on his home line, or sorry, mobile line, Sawyer's mobile. And let's make sure it doesn't go to voicemail. Stops ringing, and it's still ringing at his desk phone, but it did not go to his mobile voicemail. Okay, so single number reach is working for both of our entities. Which gateway did this go out of? This went out of the Netherlands gateway. Now, who was the calling party here? Calling party was 3001, who's at branch 2 Netherlands site. It looks like it's going out as local gateway. Let's clear it off. All of our gateways are cleared off. And let's try that same call from, let's say, Jack Shepard. Let's have him call 3002. It rings once at James' phone. Now it's ringing the PSTN. Which gateway is it going out? Going out the corporate headquarter gateway, 1001 for international 1, free 1, 6 for mobile phones in the Netherlands, 70357575. All right, so it went out the local gateway. All right, let's clear it off. rollback buffer and try Jack calling 1002. Hugo. Okay, so now we've got both lines of the PSTN phone ringing. Calling party shows from Jack Shepard 1001, so CNAM's working, but CLID is still showing 1001, and it's still going out corporate headquarter gateway as a local call. First of all, why is it working? Why is it dialing properly? If our remote destination was for Hurley's mobile was +1 to and also for his home +1 206 501 quadruple 5, why is it going out as a local number with only 10 digits? Or why, when we called Sawyer's phone and it needed to dial international, why did it go out properly? This all goes back to module 10 and 11 for globalization and localization. We first globalized the number, and that was the remote destination number we used, was the globalized format, but then it's localized at the egress gateway. So each of these egress gateways, whether it's a SIP trunk to headquarters or an ISDN, so let's just jump into any one of these. Be our ISDN MGCP gateway at branch 2 site. Okay, has a outbound called party transformation CSS that matches a partition or contains a partition and matches called party transformation patterns when the page finally loads, and the ones that are for the Netherlands gateway or the branch 2 gateway. So when it's going out as a local number, it's chopping off everything, and if we take a look at it, probably just sending it as is to the local gate or to a route list. Really, it's actually sending it on to a route pattern because our transformation, I'm sorry, we're not looking at translation. This is the called party transformation, so it's chopping off the called party number and sending the remaining digits out to the gateway. Or when we have the Netherlands gateway for, not that one, free 1, so calls within the Netherlands, so like to our digit 6 for mobile numbers, and then 70357575. We've got, that doesn't match 3120, but it does match +31. We discard the pre-dot, the +31, and prefix is 0, and so it was going out with 0, 6, 70357575. So again, it's all of the work that we've already done to set up our system that's allowing all of our remote destinations to have full E164 numbers, including the plus, and everything to work perfectly no matter which egress gateway it goes out. The power behind the globalization and localization. Okay, let's clear off this gateway. At this point, we're going to state that we have met all the requirements for task 1. Everything works properly.